Minnesota is very close to Finland, so it's nice to be here. Your summer is a bit hotter than ours, though. We pretty much skipped the whole summer this year in there. So I've heard. Luckily I wasn't there, so happily in here. We have looked into the estimation of risk of moving pigs, weaned pigs, during an FMD outbreak. And our objective has been to establish the likelihood estimation for FMD exposure and spread if these weaned pigs are moved during an outbreak. So basically we are trying to figure out what is risky and what is not risky, and what would be safe to move and what would not be safe to move if there is an FMD situation in the US. And hopefully by doing this risk assessment, we would be able to prevent what happened in England in 2001. I'm pretty sure no one in the world wants to see this happening, and FMD being a very, very highly spreadable foreign animal disease is capable of doing this, as we all know. So we're doing risk assessment. So what does that actually mean? It means that we collect existing knowledge from researchers, from the industry, from the farmers. So we look into papers, we look into industry guidelines, the current best practices, all of that, and collect it together to assess it and to analyze it, to figure out what is happening and where, and how does that fit into what FMD as a disease does. And then after analyzing it, this data we collect feeds into the secure pork supply, into trying out, figuring out practices that allow us to move these animals even through an outbreak, so that the industry doesn't have to stop completely. We figure out with this work what is safe and what is not safe to move. Obviously the data isn't complete, because before an outbreak there's always things to learn, but to have a plan is always so much better than not having a plan at all. Then you just make it a bit better as you go. So Riikka will move into the pathways and explain them to you.
Okay, so here we have a diagram of our pathway. So basically this is a very busy slide, so don't worry, we'll walk you through this. So this is basically all the scenarios where weaned pigs could get infected while they are in transit. And what's important in this slide is the origin site where the weaned pigs leave, and then the destination site where they arrive. And in this diagram, the red color represents possible outcomes. So, for example, in the first one, are the weaned pigs infected or not infected on the origin site? And then the blue ones are always pig movement. So here we are on our origin site, and we don't have infected pigs. So we can start moving the weaned pigs. So we're over here. And then in one of our pathways that I'm going to talk a bit more later, we estimated the likelihood of the pigs in transit, so they are in the truck. What's the likelihood of them getting infected through FMD virus contaminated truck surfaces? So because we can't really tell, are they infected during transport or not, we still continue pig movement here, even though they were infected. The fifth pathway is the likelihood of susceptible pigs in transit getting infected by airborne transmission of FMD virus. So we have different scenarios that we've estimated the risk for. So in the fourth pathway, we estimated the likelihood of susceptible weaned pigs being infected in transit through exposure to FMD virus contaminated truck surfaces. So this is basically the outline of all of our pathways. how we approached the likelihood estimations. So first we have a literature review. So for example, in this pathway, I went through literature and I found whether there was any previous disease outbreaks because of contaminated truck surfaces, and how does FMD virus survive on different truck surfaces with different disinfectants. Then we went through some recommendations for biosecurity, for example, from OIE, the fat prep documents, and what was really useful for us was the secure pork supply enhanced biosecurity recommendations. And then when we had gathered all this data and read the documents, we estimated the risk. So just an example of, in this pathway, how do the weaned pigs get infected through the contaminated truck surfaces? So, well, obviously, if the truck isn't cleaned and disinfected properly, it is possible that they would get infected. So we need to have proper contact time and concentration. The temperature of the water is very important. And then what kind of disinfectant is used. So if these are not adequate, then the cleaning and disinfection is not proper. And also, if there is any organic material left on the truck surfaces during or after the cleaning and disinfection, then the disinfectants don't work. And the truck can be contaminated at the cleaning and disinfection station. So once we load the pigs to the truck, they will get infected. And this is what we concluded. So if we follow enhanced biosecurity while we move the weaned pigs, the likelihood is low if the cleaning and disinfection is done adequately. So we use proper disinfectants, proper contact times, and so forth. But in some circumstances, if the outbreak happens in winter, for example, in Minnesota, the temperatures would be below freezing, most likely, then some of the disinfectants might not work properly. Or the organic material might get frozen, and then it is more difficult to clean the truck. So then the likelihood would rise to, or it could be low or moderate in temperatures below freezing.
Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all the pathways. As you saw, we have quite a number of them. So we wanted to give you an overview of one of them to explain the system a bit further. I'm just going to walk you through the diagram quickly without going into that much detail in the rest of the pathways. So the fifth pathway, now we learned how the pigs can get infected during transportation from the truck. Another route for infection is airborne. FMD can spread with air. So the pigs could get infected just by the air coming into this truck while in movement. Now, luckily, pigs mostly get infected through mouth when they touch surfaces where there's virus or eat or drink something with the FMD virus. They're very resistant for airborne infection. So the likelihood for this to happen was actually quite low, even though it is possible. And now we can move back into the farrowing site, the origin. Now, one option is that the pigs will come infected at the origin site. And because it takes, as we learned from Amy's presentation, it takes time for the disease to manifest into clinical signs. During that time, the farmer is unable to detect that he or she has infected pigs at the site. If those animals are moved before that detection time, obviously we have pigs that are infected and now are transported to another site. If they are detected, obviously the movement is stopped. No one wants to move animals that are sick. Now there's time. You can use time to detection. As we learned from Amy's presentation, it takes around 12 days. So not moving any animals for 14 days when an outbreak is there could give us enough time to be quite confident that these animals are not infected and are safe to move. And this is how Amy's model feeds into all of this data also. But we have a chance of infected animals getting on transport. And what happens then is that, again, these animals are breathing out the virus. They're excreting that virus, and they're now on the roads. Now, I said to you that pigs are resistant to getting FMD through breathing it in. Unfortunately, that's not the case for other animals. Cattle and sheep are very susceptible for getting FMD through breathing the virus. And also pigs, even though they're resistant of getting that disease through their airway system, they're considered the amplifier host, meaning that they actually excrete a huge amount of the virus through their own breathing. And that means that if we do have any pigs on the road who are infected, they're actually producing a lot of aerosolized virus that then could infect other animals, cattle or sheep. Now, in the end, these animals, all of these different pathways feed into the destination site. And now you can see there's multiple ways how pigs coming from the origin site could get infected before they get into the destination site. Now, at the destination site, there's still things that can be done. You can use adequate surveillance time when there's a pig load coming in, to surveil if they get symptoms. They might still be in that latent state of infection when they arrive to the farm, so that they have to be surveilled. And if there's adequate biosecurity, that could prevent that disease spreading from the destination site again to other sites. But it's a complicated process. It takes a lot of data to build this whole system, and it takes a lot of analysis to figure out what the risks are. However, at the destination site, we found out that if the enhanced biosecurity protocols are followed, if the trucks are cleaned properly, and the disinfection is proper, and if these trucks are moving on the road with far enough distance between them so that the airborne infection doesn't come a problem, the likelihood of this disease spread happening would be low. But if any of these measures is not taken care of, or there's a lapse, then the likelihood of disease presented at this destination site and spreading on to other sites becomes higher, moderate, or even high. So our take-home message in here is that it is every single player in this system who is responsible. It is not just the origin site or just the transport people or just the destination site. Biosecurity on all these levels is highly important. It needs to be taken seriously. And the ability to detect those clinical signs that Amy described is very, very important. And it's important to realize that other diseases might show these symptoms also. Now, our goal is, as Juan said, to eradicate FMD if it ever arrives into US with minimum cost to the industry. So that's what everyone's trying to do in here. And to do this, the time to prepare, the time to act, to figure out how to do this is right now. It needs to happen before the outbreak is here, otherwise it's too late and we end up with something horrific like UK had. So to do this, it's helpful to identify the origin and destination sites, as Juan explained. It is very, very important to make a robust, good biosecurity plan, and there's a lot of helpful information to do that. And it is very important to able to be able to detect those clinical signs for this disease, even though you don't see it here. And hopefully you will never, ever see it.